Welcome everybody. After we have nearly finished with our theoretical portions, it's time to undertake projects. And projects comprise of a significant portion of your assessment for the subject matter that you are undergoing. Therefore, it's very important that we take up these projects appropriately with our respective mentors or guide who are being allotted to you. And also utilize the vacation time or any surplus time that you have in hand to complete the projects that you are supposed to do. As I said, project is a very important component in your subject matter, that's on happiness, either for science of happiness or happiness at work students, because the idea is to help you experience the concept or construct of happiness within you, and while you undertake project, you will get to understand and relate whatever theoretical portions that you have undergone. But while you do so, we are interested that you develop some idea on your own. Although we would be allocating some thoughts for you, it's up to you how you take up this work with your respective supervisors and mentors and take it forward. This is because it is not a classroom practical. There is a big difference between a classroom practical and the project that we are expecting from you to undertake. Since in a classroom practical, you know the relationship between cause and effect, and you also know the outcome. You have to simply replicate it. But if you undertake a project like this, you will still understand what are the variables that you are going to undertake. They are known to you, but we expect some innovative ideas so that the outcome becomes unknown before you actually undertake this research. So innovation is one thing that we would expect you to introduce in your thought process and then take it forward. So I'll be showing you some slides, around 15 slides. It'll take around half an hour to 35 minutes to tell you about these slides. And this is all about how to incubate an idea. What are the common mistakes that we make in undertaking projects? What are the steps that we must follow while we undertake the research? And how to communicate research? All these things become doubly important because the subject matter that you are in is not the one like the one you are regularly undergoing in your other classes, which has a component or a subject matter belonging to hard sciences or engineering sciences. Therefore, you must understand how the researches are undertaken in social sciences, or in particular happiness research vis-a-vis the natural sciences. So we'll begin with that, and therefrom we'll actually take other things forward. So let us first try to understand what are the areas that we are going to undertake. So the issues that you would be considering and the steps that you are going to follow is something we are going to talk about. Remember, your mentor, guide, or supervisor will ultimately guide you. This is just an overall template of how projects are to be undertaken. I'll give you some examples of the projects as well. But by and large, these are a general outline. The specific outline and guidance will come from your respective supervisors. Well, first we'll try to understand then what are the differences between natural and social sciences. To tell you frankly, the natural sciences, which involve physical sciences and life sciences, and the social sciences, they don't differ really in terms of research because both sciences employ same scientific methods or models. Scientific methods are not different. Both employ general laws that govern the nature and nurture. That is, the laws are common in that sense, while in social sciences, we emphasize more on theories. In natural sciences, we bank more upon the general laws that govern nature and nurture. Both sciences employ empirical and measured data as evidence. That is, without having empirical evidence, none of these sciences actually make any conclusion. Therefore, empirical data are something which we have to gather, and that's what is the primary job. And then both employ experimental data in laboratory conditions and natural settings. That is, before you make any conclusion, some experimental data are to be collected in either of these sciences. The nature of experimental design may be different. The nature of the study design may be different, but ultimately both employ empirical data. But let us also try to understand what are the difference between these two sciences as well. Social sciences largely operate in an open system where variables are not controllable every time. So you must remember, social sciences is about society, about human being, and within that framework you have to work. Therefore, there are many variables which we may not be able to control all the time. So either through a statistical process or through a study design, we need to control such variables. That's one of the challenges of social sciences research. Therefore, social science research uses a variety of research methods. They don't stick to one kind. While natural sciences stick to mostly laboratory and experimental conditions, social science go beyond that and try to undertake research in various forms. It doesn't mean that social sciences do not undertake research in laboratory conditions. This is also done in laboratory conditions at times, but it's also done in the middle of the people, in the middle of the society, through action research, through case studies, through correlational studies. A variety of study designs and paradigms are available, which are utilized. In the following slide, I will actually show you a template where social sciences researches can be better understood in terms of its nuances. Let us try to see that. When we talk about social sciences research, there are four corners you must notice. One is what are the steps, what are the major methods, what are the limitations, and what are the goals of the inquiry. These four coordinates must be understood in social sciences research. The goals of inquiry are roughly similar with other forms of natural sciences. That is, one of the goal is to describe a social situation or a phenomenon or a mental state. If it is possible, then we go beyond and try to make a prediction based on the empirical or descriptive data available. If prediction is accurate, then we try to explain it, why there is a relationship, why there is a cause and effect relationship. If that explanation is possible, we would be able to isolate the variables that confound us or create extraneous or erroneous variables. We can control them, and then finally we can apply them. So application becomes important. When we take up this research as such, there are certain steps you may see. We have written it: strategy, heuristics, logistics, tactics, statistics, and communication. These are simple steps for any research. Let us not confuse with social science or natural sciences research. In any science, in any scientific research, you have to have a strategy. In social science, you decide whether you are going to do it in a laboratory condition or an open-ended condition, whether you are going to do a research which is action-oriented research or a case study research. Your strategy has to be decided first, how you are going to undertake it. If that is done, then you go for the heuristics. That is, you try to get the background literature based on your research incubation. That what is your research and what are the studies already available with you. That is, you have to decide what has been done already, what could not be done, what can be done, and what you aim to do. Whatever can be done, everything cannot be done by you. Therefore, you have to decide under several alternatives which one you are going to do. If that is decided in heuristics, then you decide about the logistics. That is, you have to decide about the tools. Do you have appropriate tools to undertake those research? If it is a scientific research, you would try to understand whether the laboratory is equipped with all the logistic instruments for undertaking this research. If it is a social science research, if it is a happiness research, for example, and if you are using a survey, you need to understand whether you have got an appropriate questionnaire with you or not. So these all things come under logistics. Then come tactics, that research design, that what kind of research design you are going to follow. The design is actually could be many types. As I said, in social sciences research, you actually utilize a varieties of research design. You can try to see the relationship between two variables for a given set of individuals. For example, height and weight, are they correlated? I can try to see this and undertake this research on a set of individuals. Or you can do the other way around, that you have got one variable, but you want to see the difference between two sets of individuals. Like I would like to see whether vitamin can create weight gain for two different sets of individuals. So one set of individual will get vitamin and the other set will not get it. And in that process, I can understand whether the two groups are different or not. So the second example that I have given is a experimental design, and the first example that I have given is actually a correlational design. So by and large, we try to understand the difference between a correlational design and an experimental design. Both are causal relationships, both deal with cause and effect. But in one case, we have got two variables, one group, and in the other case, we have got two groups, one variable. You can have other designs as well. You can take an action research oriented research. That is basically a solution intensive research, that as long you don't get a solution, you do not complete your research. So you can have that. You can have a case study based research. You can try to understand a particular case without trying to generalize the case to mass population. You simply try to do a post-mortem of a given case and then try to analyze it. You can do a descriptive design. Idea is to simply describe through observations a particular incident or an event. So in social science research, a varieties of research designs could be utilized, and you have to decide your topic, how it is related to your design. And finally, you analyze data with the use of statistics, and when the statistics are done, you are in a position to make certain conclusions. When conclusions are done, then you start writing or communicating the paper. After understanding this thing, you should also understand the major methods, because your study's backbone is the research method. Whether you are going to undertake a observation design, that is, you are simply going to observe scientifically a phenomenon or not, that you have to decide. You're going to experiment or not, you have to decide. Whether you're going to survey or not, for example, you can undertake a survey, how happy our people are in the campus. You can do a survey. You can do a case study. You can do some kind of simulations, or you can utilize certain standard tests which are available already in your kitting. So you can use these methods. Any one of these methods could be utilized. But the major problem with social sciences research is subjective interpretation of qualitative data or any kind of data. There is a provision for subjective interpretation. So you should be very careful that when you do social science research, you should not overstate your finding, because there is a tendency, there is always a urge for the researchers to make predictions. So we should avoid any kind of illusory expertise and prediction urge while we actually conduct research. The lack of 0 point is also a very important issue. While you have undergone the class on measurement of happiness, we have talked about scaling techniques, and we said that in social sciences we rarely use a ratio scale where there is a theoretical 0. In social sciences, we by and large utilize nominal scale, ordinal scale, or interval scale. We do not use a ratio scale. Therefore, comparison becomes always relative and it is never absolute. There are certain ethical issues also, which I'll be talking at the end. The participation, since you would be dealing with the human subjects, the participation has to be voluntary. You should be able to share the results of the study with other community. You should be able to debrief after the subjects or the participants had given you data, and you must undertake informed consent before you take up the studies. With this general framework, let us try to understand what are the topics that we may undertake. You do not have to limit within that the set of topics that I'm going to talk about, or you can also choose any topic, whatever your supervisor talks about. I'm simply giving you a set of examples, and from that examples, you can draw some inspiration. So those who are in the classes of happiness or happiness at work, they will be benefited from that set of project topics. But before I tell that as well, certain preliminary issues also to be taken into consideration. One is that, what is that new thing you are going to do in it? Unless there is a novelty in your research work, it is not going to attract anyone. You can challenge an existing theoretical insight, or you can create a new theoretical insight. You can propose a new conceptual framework. You can find a solution of an existing problem. Anything that you do has to have some degree of newness or novelty. we often call it as surprise element in research. Otherwise, you will be reinventing the wheel or fire. Let us ensure that we are not going to, whatever little time we are going to spend on this, let us not reinvent the wheel or reinvent the fire. We should also be able, whatever we do, it should not just a one odd case. We should be able to relate that with the available theoretical and research that is already there in the literature. And the significance of the research proposal is also very important, because any research that you are doing, either it must fill in the gap what is already existing in the literature, or it should have a deliverable that it has the potential to deliver something. You may not be able to deliver something at this point of time because it is too early for you to deliver, but the deliverable insight must be there. If it is not there, you should be able to fill in the gap in the knowledge that we have in our kit. Now let us see the research domains. Those students who are doing science of happiness classes, for them I can talk of certain topics. Of course, as I repeat, that your topics would be distributed by the coordinator, and the supervisors will ultimately be responsible for undertaking this. These are only examples for you. Like, performance is linked to stress state. If you want to study it, you can do it. The normal idea is that if you are having too much of stress, your performance goes down. If your stress level is too low, your performance goes down. If you have got optimal stress, then your performance is the best. But within this framework, can you do, or can you create a small project to understand whether these two things are linked or not, stress and performance? Another topic is like resilient people are happier. You can have a set of people who are resilient based on a questionnaire. You can find it out who are more resilient and who are less resilient. And then you can also administer a question to all of them on happiness. And you can see whether there is a relationship between resilience and happiness or not. The third topic could be mobile phone attachment reduces social interaction. We all know this. We all know this. But the question is, with this topic, can we cite some empirical foundation from your study that this is true? Digital social media affects the perception of happiness is another point close to this mobile phone. But actually, does it affect the perception of happiness? Well, with social media and digital interactions also we become happy. But is it the same sense or perception of happiness that we get it in face-to-face interaction? How we can understand this? What are the ways to experiment or study the two different sets of perception? Can we model happiness in face competitionally? It's another challenge. A lot of researches are done on face detection softwares, but very few are actually dealing with happiness. Now, how far happiness can be detected different from other emotions when we use these perception technologies to detect it automatically. Optimist students perform better in examinations. Like, we can have everybody's performance in examination, and also we can give them a test on optimism which are available in abundance in internet. And then we can see whether there is a correlation between performance in examination and optimism. We know that handicapped people are happier than otherwise. I mean, normal persons. And handicapped people are unhappy simply because of their structural obstacles. But it's a misconception that handicapped people are unhappy. That's not true. Handicapped people are equally happy, or even more than the normal persons. But the question is, are they really happy? What are their happiness status? We have never studied it. You can try to examine that. You can also see whether perception of happiness has got a generation gap or not. You can see older people are happier than millennials. Who are more happy? Whether millennials are happier or older people are happier. We can see a group difference in this way as well. So these are small examples of um, happiness research projects, but you are free to take up other examples as well in consultation with the project coordinator or subject coordinator and the respective supervisor. Those who are in the field of happiness at work, for them we can talk about certain topics. For example, making sense of attitude virtually. That is, can I understand somebody's attitude through virtual interactions? That is, suppose through email conversations, through FaceTime interactions, video interactions. So digital interaction is also a form of interaction which is going to become a very prominent task in tomorrow's world. So is it possible to understand somebody's attitude virtually? It's a research question. Workplace value is known to all of us, but we all know the values are changing in organizations. As I have just talked about, the workplace value for older people and the workplace value for millennials, they're different. They're different, going to be different. So we can test it in organizations. Efficacy of job crafting in workplace is another area. Stress is another area like the other research that I have just talked about. But here in happiness at work, can you determine that your stress is not contagious and you are not actually transferring your stress to others? This is a challenging topic because, like virus, stress is also very contagious. How to make sure that someone's stress is not going to infect others in terms of their performance? How to nudge workers' mind for safety practices? We have talked about nudging principles, and workers, we instruct them how to adhere to safety practices. But as I said, more you instruct, more there are resistance at times. It's important that we nudge their mind. Can you create some nudging tools in order to help them adhere to safety practices? Can you identify the kind of happiness in your organization or the organization you are working? Which practice more often? We talk about happiness of many kinds, but the idea is that what kind of happiness you are actually looking for or practice more often, that we don't know. So your perception of happiness and your practice of happiness can be empirically understood through certain studies. How we manage failure in organizations, how employees could be made resilient, are certain areas which can also be tested. That managing failure has become a very important issue in today's world because recession is there everywhere in today's environment, and many of us has to actually manage failure and become resilient. So how to do that? What are the ways? And if you can Go for a case study, for example. That would be very valid. You can also try to see, you can adhere to a secondary literature and try to make a contribution in terms of understanding that what are the different approaches people take in order to manage failure. So there are many topics that you can undertake in happiness at work. But before you begin, plan to tackle a research problem. You create a good research problem. Get sufficient information about methodology, because after you decide about a problem, if you find that the research methodology is not appropriate or you cannot do that, it is a wastage of effort. Design the study properly, because design is a very important issue. As I said, in social science research, there are many variables which you cannot control. But at least some of the variables, if you don't control, then social science research may not be very relevant for you. Therefore, you have to have certain alternative designs also in hand. If you fail in your actual design, you may undertake an alternative design. Just keep that thing in mind. The logistics, as I said, that is instrument, test, whatever you are going to utilize, are they available with you? What are the other resources you already have? You are working in a group. Suppose you have got 5 friends with you. Everybody must have some resources in order to undertake this piece of research. Try to see what kind of resources are available with your friends and then coordinate it to ultimately collect data and analyze it. So this is very important before you do. I have given you a small template how to undertake it. You can go through it while you find time, and step by step you can see how the research question needs to be framed and how the specifics of your project are to be decided. Finally, how you are going to make a conclusion of it. So a template is given about how to create a good research proposal and how to take it forward. Now you have to actually do the research with this backdrop. First thing is the selection of a topic. So you have decided about a topic. A topic is just not what the subject matter I have just shown. Topic is something where you must be able to tell or at least suggest the exploratory or explanatory relationship between the cause and effect or the predictor and outcome variable. So the variables cause and effect, as well as the subject, that is the independent variable, which is the cause, dependent variable, which is the outcome, and the subject variable, which are the participants. These 3 things must be there in your topic. So if you want to see impact of running on happiness in undergrad students, I'm talking about running is a cause, happiness is an outcome, in undergrads is the subject variable. So all 3 things must be there in your topic. So research concept, construct and variables must be identified in the topic. Then you need to do some survey of literature, that is whether really running helps you in developing happiness and not. We all know, those who are students of happiness, that while you run, there is a dopamine release from the brain, in fact from the hypothalamus to brain, I mean through certain neurotransmitters, and it creates joviality, some form of happiness, and that happiness goes up while you run. Question is, with this survey of literature, there must be some gap in literature. We have to identify that gap in literature. And therefrom, we have to state the problem. So stating the problem in logical terms, not a layman term. Whenever you state a problem in logical term, the cause-effect relationship must be stated. And that cause-effect relationship must be stated in scientific terms is important, because from there you have to understand the variables. If running is a variable, happiness is a variable, you must be able to measure both running as well as happiness, because variables are something which varies, and if it varies, you must be having a quantitative measure of it. So you can quantitatively measure how much I am running. Suppose I am running 5,000 steps. That's quantitatively measurable. And my perception of happiness can also be quantitatively measurable by a happiness questionnaire. If these two things are measurable, then you can operationalize the relationship between running and happiness, and therefrom you can see whether the groups differ or not. You can see the difference in gender, the difference in subjects, different in age. I mean, you can do a varieties of studies. Then you have to hypothesize. Heuristics, as we have just understood. Hypothesis has to be stated. What is your hypothesis? Because hypothesis is something which you have to frame, and then statistically we try to reject it or nullify it, which we call null hypothesis, which is a hypothesis, the express purpose of being rejected. Because statistically you have to prove that your hypothesis that you wanted to prove is statistically acceptable or rejectable. While you do all these things, control of variables becomes very important. Because suppose if you are trying to see the difference or relationship between running and happiness, somebody who is running every day, for example, or somebody who is running once in a month, or somebody who is running 1,000 feet a day, and somebody who is running 10,000 feet a day or steps a day, definitely you need to control. Unless you control them, you would not be able to understand. So the control can be possible by selection of appropriate subjects, or control is also possible selection of appropriate task. So it may be a subject control or a task control. If nothing works, then you can have a statistical control. There are so many statistical methods also to control your data. Then you need to design your experiment, as I said, or study. It can be a correlational design, it can be experimental design. You have to sample subjects. If you have got 21 different hostels, you can take 5 hostels as sample. If you want to take all hostels but few students from every hostel, that also you have to explain. In any case, whatever the population, the ideal size is 5% of the population generally are considered, and if that is considered, it can be said that it's a probability sample. Probability sample means whatever characteristic you are going to measure, it is ultimately verifiable against a normal probability curve, a Gaussian curve. If it is a non-probability sample, for example, you have taken only few students from one hall and all students from another hall, then there may be a sampling error. Then you decide about the procedural steps. You talk about the statistical tools, whatever statistical tools you would like to utilize. It may be a parametric statistics, it may be a non-parametric statistics. Your supervisors should be definitely telling you. Parametric statistics are those statistics which we use when the distribution of your sample is normally shaped. If it is not normal, the distribution is not normal, then we use non-parametric statistics. Based on your statistics, we finally make inference, generalize finding, and write references. These are the steps we follow in any research, including the research project that you do. Common problems, let us try to understand. The common problem is that we lack organizational structure at times. We lack focus, unity, and coherence within the entire research program. Don't try to be repetitive and verbose while you report your result. At times we fail to cite influential papers, very important paper in that, but we have never cited. We don't cite enough developments. Some people only cite some of the available literature only without realizing that there are a lot of recent works have already been done, or some influential works are done at a very early stage, but you have not reported them. The cited papers also need to be critically evaluated along with your own findings. Sometimes we miss it out. Sometimes we cite irrelevant and trivial references. They should be avoided. And depending too much on secondary sources is also not good, because ultimately you have collected some data. And if you do the entire study based on secondary resources, then it may not be a good study. In that case, you can also do, but that should be a meta-analytical study. Research misconduct, I would like to specially emphasize that three kinds of misconduct is very serious. One is called fabrication, one is falsification, and one is plagiarism. Fabrication is something where you make up of your data and report them. You don't actually collect data and then you make it up and report them. Falsification, you manipulate, omit, or change data with inaccurate representation. You actually don't, whatever data you gather, you don't report to them. You selectively choose some of the data which fits into your hypothesis. And then you try to establish your observation. That's falsification. And plagiarism, we all know, taking others' concept, ideas, results, words without citation, which is not acceptable scientifically. We must be able to avoid it. I've also given you some ideas about how to communicate your research. What is that you write in introduction? You should state the problem, introduce the problem in introduction, develop the background, that is review of studies, and state the purpose and rationale, why you are going to undertake the studies. The researches, as I said, several researches has already been done, but you are trying to actually understand the gap in research. You are not doing any exploratory research at the moment, which can add value separately from something which is never known. Therefore, introduce all these things systematically. Write the method section. Who are your participants, their age, sex, education, size, who and how many participated in their selection procedure, what kind of tools you have utilized, what are the validity, reliability, and details of these tools, the procedure that you have followed, the results that you have obtained. You can do a descriptive data. You can have a statistical design. Descriptive data is nothing but mean and ST, and at best some other kinds of standard dispersion methods. Statistical design is something where you need to control, where you need to see the significance between two groups or relationship between two variables. It can be a correlational design, it can be a inferential design from sample to population. If you infer, then you have to properly design statistics, treatment of the data. You must be able to put up your tables and figures, your statistical presentation, significance, effect size, strength of relationship. All these things should be part of your result section. Finally, you should write the discussion section, where you must be able to tell how the study helped to resolve the problem, because you will reiterate the research problem once again, that this is what you wanted to study, how the findings can be linked to the phenomena at a very complex level, or maybe at a simpler level as well, not necessarily at very complex level. And then the contribution of your study and theoretical implication with conclusion. That is, you can support a particular theory, you can challenge a particular theory, you can fill in the gap for a particular theory, but in any case, you must remain within the four walls of your data. You should not overstate or make overgeneralization based on your data. This is a serious problem for most of the researchers that we undertake. We should also be able to write references, your author's note. All these things must be noted in your final communication, and this must be given to the respective supervisors. But finally, before I compile everything for you, let me tell you, social science research requires protection of human subjects. If you are dealing with human subjects, even in animal subjects also, such protections are kept in mind. You have to respect research participants. You must ensure independent review of risk and potential benefits. If the participant doesn't want to participate, you cannot force them. If someone agreed to do that and later on do not want to participate, you must be able to release them. All data must be coded or encrypted. Their personal um, identity should not be revealed. Their voluntary and informed consent should be taken. And make sure that there is no harms to your participants. If there is a harm, there must be some compensation. And somebody should be able to have comprehensively oversee your entire work, which we call effective oversight system. I'm sure your respective supervisors would be doing that. So these are the most important thing when you deal with human subjects. So I have tried to tell you all these things simply because of the fact this is research ethics, and these ethics and values must be adhered to. Research findings are not that important. More than what is research findings and empirical data, important that you have followed all research guidelines, ethics, you have not falsified, fabricated, and you have not adhered to any form of plagiarism, and you have valued human subjects while you actually carried out research. Happiness research is a positive and efficiency-based research, it's not a deficiency-based research. But my suggestion is that you come out with a good research idea, protect the subjects, follow all these steps, general steps that I have said, and then try to report it and finally send it to your respective supervisors. If you have got any issue, you can actually send me an email. I am duty bound to respond to all your mail if there is any confusion.